This is The Beard with another You Know Me, a Golden Owls podcast. And I have Buddha here with me. How are you, Buddha?
I'm doing good. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a while. I know everyone's itching at the bit to hear another podcast. So I believe this is going to be either 12 or 13. I should actually keep track. But man, when we started this about, 2 months ago, and it just took off. And, the whole purpose is to focus and talk to local people, legends. And speaking about legends, we have a future legend here with us today.
Oh, too kind.
So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Jackson Schroeder. I just graduated with my Master's of Music from Montreal, Quebec at McGill University, and I'm currently working as co-owner and manager with Javi Salgado over at Shroglo. Schroeder's on Gloucester, new restaurant, about just surpassed 5 months of being open. So, and do a little bit of musical gigs around here as well. So it's good to be on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I mean, we've been trying to get with you for a while. I know, schedule, and finally, I'm glad that we're able to do this today.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's about time.
Yeah, and talk about a interesting setting. We're actually here at the Brunswick Actors Theater. They actually have a show opening up tonight. So I love this setting. This is amazing.
It's apropos, actually. Since you and I both act on a semi-regular basis.
And you sing.
Yeah. Acting, trying. It ends up being mostly impressions and stuff, but we'll get that portfolio built at some point.
Impressions? Okay.
Yeah.
Like who?
We can do. I can go down so many things. I think as a little kid, I've always wanted to just do some kind of voice impressions. I had this just ability to recognize people's voices and be able to emulate that pretty quickly, and then just be able to do that.
So who's your favorite? Who would you say is your favorite impression to do?
Oh my gosh, what a question. I've always loved doing just accents with the English language, because I think German in particular, because I think that just ends up being the funniest one. So you blend in, you try to go to the party, and you try to. We do a lot of drinking in Bavaria, and it becomes very interesting experience.
Wow. So, do you ever do that at when somebody doesn't you're meeting somebody for a first time? Would you ever?
Oh my God, no, yeah. So there are these little challenges I like to do. So if I'm going in if I'm in a grocery store, you can just do any accent you want. If you've never seen anybody in your life, and you'd be like, oh yes, that'll be all. I'd like to get a cup of coffee, and that'll conclude my grocery order list, and I'll take this back. Okay, cheerio, have a good day. And I think it just gets them off their heels a little bit.
Right, it would. I'd be like if I was the cashier, I'd be like, what just happened? Where are you from?
Everywhere.
Everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Schroeder families grew up nomadic, so we moved around a lot.
That's true. Because so where were you born?
I was born in Atlanta originally. My sister and I grew up right in Midtown, and my father was a chef by trade, and I'd say he still is. Of course, being a business consultant, and still, chefing it up. He's incredible. He did it for about 36 years. And so when I was born in 2000, zero recollection of just being born. Yeah, I'm young baby. I know.
No, I just felt
when
old.
When I tell people I'm born in 2000, they're like, oh, no. I'm so sorry.
You're barely old enough to drink.
Yeah, I know.
My daughter was born in 2000.
Oh, man.
Dad? No.
Father? Never met. But we moved they're originally from New York, my mom and dad. My mom's from upstate New York, Albany area, and my dad's from Long Island /
Strong
Iceland.
Island in the house.
Oh yeah, no, it'll kick in sometimes when he's coaching. He'll give you the hard truth, but he'll get you through it. He's only there to make you better, and it's always out of love. But we moved all the way to New York, and then so Brooklyn and Long Island area, and then up to Vermont. He ended up teaching at New England Culinary Institute. And then we eventually moved over to San Diego, where he worked at this casino called the Barona. It was I think it was an hour and a half drive outside of La Jolla area. It was this area called Wildcat Canyon. As a kid, I thought it was super cool. still very good memories of that place because you would just see desert, and that was the only time I saw a desert.
Yeah.
It's really neat. Like, looked like Tatooine, like from Star Wars at one point. Really cool. It's just no two moons up there. That's my only complaint. And then we ended up moving back to Georgia in '08, and then we eventually basically permanently stayed in the state. We moved around 3 times though, and then graduated from high school in 2018, and then went off to Boston, which was really fun.
Wow.
Yeah, Boston's a great place.
It's super cool. A super cool city. Expensive, but I think if you take the idea of money out of the equation, and then you just find a way to blend into the state and to the city, and using the gift of music, you're able to find a lot of really cool opportunities.
Were you there for the Berklee School of Music?
I was the one adjacent to it. So when I went to Boston Conservatory, but right when I got in, they merged because Boston Conservatory actually went bankrupt because they built this beautiful, another beautiful building called the Ipswich Building, and like fantastic practice rooms and a beautiful little rehearsal hall that ended up also being a concert hall as well, because they basically ran out of money to build a concert hall. So it ended up turning into a parking lot instead. And then right next to that was Fenway Park. So if you wanted to go see a Red Sox game, you could absolutely go ballistic over there. And it was super fun.
So what is that song? They paved whatever to make in the parking lot?
Yeah, I'll have to learn that one.
Yeah.
And then they merged together. So I guess it was kind of a blessing in disguise because they ended up combining classical and contemporary music together. So
nice.
With that, you were able to take a bunch of really different contemporary music classes. So modern, I was able to take a lot of jazz classes. I ended up doing some classes in electronic production and engineering. So you develop a lot of really cool skills, and especially you realize as a classical musician, like there's a lot of freedom, but of course, classical musician is still a little bit restricted, I'd say. There's still a little bit of rules, but there's room for interpretation always. But then you go into the 21st century, and even then, like the 20th century, when composers like Schoenberg and Berg started working with like atonal music. So just music that to some people wouldn't sound as pleasing to the ear, but I digress. You would take these amazing classes, and I got to be in doo-wop groups as well. I was in a really cool doo-wop group with this guy named Josh Witt, and he just a ray of sunshine always, which is hilarious because he was also from New England, and every time I think New England, I'm like, there's a lot of angry people here. And I think it's usually because it's so cold. Same with living in Canada. Like, they're so happy during the spring, and then in the winter they're like,
oh yeah, because it's 8 months of darkness.
Yeah, there's 3 hours of sunlight.
Yeah.
So it's like take a vitamin D pill or get up at 5 a.m. And I was like, neither. I'll try to muscle through it.
Yeah, and then it's like, which hoodie should I wear with my hoodie because it's cold out?
It's all about layers, man.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah. When you move to a place where you end up having to wear long underwear, I feel like that's the main concern.
Yeah, because I grew up, I grew up on Long Island, but I moved to Vermont for work. Sure. So I spent about 9 years in Vermont on the Canadian border.
Okay,
so
yeah.
it's the same weather that you get in Montreal.
Yeah, it's not
and
fun.
When I was like, I had to wake up and put long underwear on. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, I never in my life that I thought I had to, like, every day when I go to work that I have to wear long johns because it is freaking freezing outside.
And then you go inside, and then those long johns are so insulated, so now it feels like you're living in, like, Arizona. So it's like, I am now really hot and want to just tear these off.
Yeah, and then you got to go outside to cool off, and then go inside to warm up. Yeah, it's not...
You find the balance, but at what cost?
Let's move somewhere warm.
That's it. Yeah, come down to Brunswick. Exactly. Boom.
That's it, right. So what got you into classical? What got you into classical music?
So great question. I started I used to be, funny enough, I used to be very shy when I was in middle school, and so I got a little inspired by my sister because she was the first person to really get started into the musical instruments. So when we lived in Los Angeles, she was playing cello, and whenever I heard her play, she was fantastic. And so she's 18 months older than me, so she was always like an extra grade up from me. So when she was in middle school, she did orchestra and chorus, so it felt like my moral obligation to also do the same thing. I always tried to look up to her, and she was very inspiring. She has a fantastic much better work ethic compared to me, always. Like, I find myself in a lazy position sometimes, and she just always working, always going at it. And so when I got into 6th grade, I went to Mabry Middle School in the Marietta/Roswell area in Georgia. And I loved my choir teacher, Miss Stepp. She was super, super cool, super kind, and very disciplined too. So when she was teaching us about music and music theory, she was very hell-bent on wanting to make sure that we were understanding why these musical phrases worked the way they did. And I just kept getting inspired by that. And then my dad knew way back when I was like 3 years old that I was going to be some kind of musician, because I have this thing called perfect pitch, which is like the way a normal just a normal human would perceive color is just how I perceive pitch. So if someone like taps on a glass, I can just hear that pitch immediately. I'm like, oh, that's a C. Oh, that's a G. It's like and it's really effective in composing, because you can just hear all of these really interesting harmonies and put that into work. So when I'm at the computer or I'm at my iPad, like trying to find really cool chord progressions, you can use that talent. So some people can use it to their advantage, and some people just don't. So I didn't realize I had that until 7th grade, when I was in orchestra and my teacher was like just plucking at a note before we were going to warm up for class. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool G you're playing. He was like, what'd you say? I was like, it's a really cool note you're playing. I thought it was a normal thing. Like, just people could identify notes like that. And so he stops class. And so like for 15 minutes before we even began a piece. And so he pulls me into this back room where there's all these beautiful electronic string instruments, electronic violin, cello, viola, etc. And he brings me out to this keyboard, and he's just plucking at notes. He's like, what is that? I'm like, G. And he's like, what is this one? I'm like, C. And he's like, holy crap. So he rushes me back over, and just, there's like 80 people in this room, and all these kids are like, oh my God, how does he do that? Like, they were flabbergasted, and I just thought that was normal. And so my next class was choir. And I told Miss Stepp, and she's like, does your orchestra teacher know about this? And so like she got up out of it, and she had told everybody about that too. So at that point, I was the freaky musical kid from then to graduation. And classical music became a really big thing for me, because there's this organization called Georgia Music Educators Association. So they do, it's very similar in most states if you have choir programs called All-State. Okay. So you audition, and it's pretty intense too. So you get one aria or art song to practice and perform, and then you have to learn ear training and sight reading. And sight reading for a lot of people ends up being the most difficult, because you have to be able to just sing these notes on the spot, like brand new. You've never seen it before. And I was pretty darn good at that. And then I had told my teacher that I was like really interested in just doing music. I didn't really like school that much to begin with. But music was something that just clicked instantly. So I started getting voice lessons from my teacher. My first voice teacher, her name is Suzanne Chafin. And funny enough, I think she grew up in like the St. Simons and like Brunswick area. So
it's just a small world.
It's manifest destiny to be here,
right?
I guess, for the time being. Yeah, it's crazy. So I had her as a teacher from 8th grade all the way up to my senior year of high school. And my high school years were like, okay, now I'm really like, I was like, intellectually lazy, except in music. So I just kept being like, okay, so when I go to college, I don't want to go to an actual college.
Right.
And so I had asked my voice teacher, like, hey, are there schools that you can just go to for just music? And she's like, well, yeah, there are these things called conservatories, and they do nothing but music. You don't have to take any general education classes, which I think ended up being a crutch for me at the end of it, because like I would have loved to have taken some classes in business and financial and financial stability, because that doesn't exist. But we're working on it. But I had gotten into classical music from that point on, because I always was assigned a weekly piece from Suzanne. She had always given me some Italian song, and then we worked our way through German, French, etc., just all those languages. And then by the time it was time to audition and apply for college, I just tried to find all of the best music schools I could find, and I found myself at Boston Conservatory. And I was a bit hesitant about it at first, because there were these people that were just so good, so unbelievably good. I went to go see Bernstein's Mass. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen Bernstein's Mass, give it a listen and a watch. Like, it's Leonard Bernstein is like one of the best composers, and I'd say like conductors of all time too. He was so incredibly talented, and the way he talked about music was super, super vivid, and still, like, even if you were non-musical, you could still understand it and feel the flow of his vernacular.
He's very, very good. Yes,
incredible. So I started just finding all these art songs, and I kept singing in choir too, and I kept staying in all-state choir, because just it was a perfect balance between being part of an ensemble and being part of a soloist, because I think that ends up becoming a really important quality in all musicians, is the ability to collaborate. Because if you're going to be a solo musician and you're just going to be doing all these, there are a lot of people who make successful careers from just being a solo musician on their own, and that's fantastic. But I think what ends up happening is when you don't have a collaborative effort with a team, you get this really like weird vibe that you feel like you're like, you know, everything, like you're the only person that knows these things, and no, that's not true. So when I put myself in a position in a collaborative effort, even in like a restaurant, I don't know anything. Like that's the best mindset to put yourself, because you end up learning so much more than being like the know-it-all. Even then, like, I graduated with my master's degree and I still don't know a thing. Like, I think having that mindset helps musicians become more successful. But of course, maintain that idea that you do know a lot of things, but don't use it until you need to.
Right.
And it's not like a fact check thing either. You just nudge it in when you need to.
Now, did you have to learn Italian, German to, understand?
Absolutely. Yeah. So at Boston Conservatory, we took repertoire, fluency, and diction classes, all in their respective languages.
Wow.
So it went from our freshman year was a class called Survey of Diction. So it went through all four, but not entirely in depth. So it was like a little crash course on each one. So there's a thing that we learn called IPA, not Indian Pale Ale.
I was about to say,
International Phonetic Alphabet. And so it's basically, when you're looking in a dictionary, you see those brackets and then you see all those fancy symbols. So that's how to pronounce that specific word. So if I were to like write my name in IPA, it would start with like a D, and then this weird little thing called an azure, which looks like a little cursive Z, but makes like a J sound. So we learned how to do that, to learn how to actually pronounce the language, and then we take fluency classes so we can understand the significance of the text, and then we took repertoire classes, which talked about the history of the composers and the language itself. So you went through everything. Wow. And it was really cool.
So French, Italian, Spanish.
So Spanish was a lucky thing, because when my dad lived in LA, and then I also have an aunt who's from Durango, Mexico, so I was around her a lot, and she would teach me Spanish too. But my dad in particular, he's got a really cool skill of just retaining knowledge as well. Like, he'll just, very similar to his father as well, they just retain knowledge like an almanac. So he'll pull up stuff that I'm like, how the hell do you know all this stuff? Like, it's amazing.
You should go on Jeopardy.
He should. I really think he would make a living on Jeopardy if he could. Like, he could pull something out of a hat and just be like, oh yeah, that's this thing. And it's so freaking cool to see that. And where was I going with that? It's
the Spanish.
Yeah. So he, as a chef, he had a huge Latino culture, especially in LA as well. So when he lived in LA, his whole brigade was people from like South Central and just around that general area of Los Angeles, and those would end up being my babysitters too, which is really cool because then you'd be with the cool kids as a 6-year-old, be like, okay, yeah. I'm with the Sheffy crowd. That's pretty cool as a kid. But he learned Spanish very quickly through that as well, and so that was a pretty easy language to retain. But we did not learn that in school. If you ended up trying to learn a language like in a piece that we didn't exactly have for classes, you were kind of on your own. So you would go to the library and grab like a diction dictionary that would pull out the pronunciation of Spanish, Russian, Czech. Like we had all of the resources we needed to successfully do any kind of piece in any language. But the main ones were Italian, German, French, and British English, and like Mid-Atlantic too. So we learned how to be like, you see, we're going to talk like this. Like how news reporters talked back in like the 30s.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those English operas were written before that time and during. Like Benjamin Britten, the British composer, we learned how to like talk like this. We had to learn how to pronounce our languages, and you'd have to sing like that too, and it was very, very fun. So that's where a lot of the impressions kind of come into play. You kind of just grow into them and you get used to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess here's my other question. So do you understand any of the words that you're singing in Italian?
Of course. Yeah, that's the other thing. So the reason we took like those classes is so that we could understand what we were singing about. Otherwise, if you brought that out to a crowd with a bunch of, opera professionals and you're singing a song like from The Magic Flute by Mozart as a song called Die Spiltnis, and it's talking about how this guy named Tamino is like infatuated with this one little photo, and she's like, this is a godly image. So if you sing it like you're cooking, the audience is going to be like, I don't think he knows what he's singing about.
Yeah.
Which is actually one of the scariest things I could imagine on stage. Like, I remember during, I had not prepared very well for one of my songs, and my voice teacher in my next lesson was like, so what is this song about? And I was like, honestly, Frank, I couldn't tell you until now. That was the one time where I felt pretty idiotic about presenting, like, and it was a beautiful piece too. That was the one thing, like, you can have the most gorgeous piece on the planet and perform it and still have it not well received because you just didn't know the context.
Right.
It's all about context.
Yeah, you got to transcend into it.
Yeah, exactly. And interpret it correctly too.
Yeah, like, or else the crowd's going to be like, yeah, I don't no.
That's exactly what it felt like. And even after you were done with the piece too, like I bet the performer was like, oops. My bad.
It's like, does he know it's a love song, not a
murder story?
Not a murder story, yeah.
the opposite of love. Pure hatred. Singing like that.
It's supposed to be a song about love, not hate.
Yes, exactly. And I can't stress it enough. When I have students one day, just telling them, like, know your stuff. I swear, like, you can do like 30 minutes of studying. Like, you don't have to do too much as long as you're doing something to keep it fresh and together. Because I can admit, I'll practice, but there's always like me trying to enjoy other things here. Like, I'm in Brunswick too, so I want to go to the beach. I want to ride the boat. I want to sometimes play a video game or two. I want to read a book. But I also know that I have what I have, and I need to respect the gift that I have. So practice is important. And I think that's the main thing. Always have some kind of schedule to practice, which I admittedly sometimes do not have, because working in the restaurant business can be a bit tough as well. It always has been, and it always will be. But it's a really good way to develop leadership skills too, which I'm glad I'm part of the business too.
Yeah, and probably time management.
Yes, too. And that's, I think people, I think my generation sometimes is not very good at with time management. There's always something that's more fun than like you could always go out for a drink rather than practice, or you can always go to Target and binge spend on clothes or video games. And sometimes I admittedly do that with clothes, as in this shirt. Like, this is a cool shirt.
That is actually a really, really cool shirt.
Thank you. It matches your shorts today. So
Yeah,
I'm
it does.
This
I'm like, I might
would have been the proper vibe.
If it's missing from your, no,
We can swap.
like you walk outside, like, where'd my shirt go?
I don't know, man. I just went.
Yeah,
It's on me now.
yeah, yeah. I hear you on that because like I like fashion, so I
Fashion.
And I'm trying to find like my style, right? And sometimes that requires a little bit of TLC with the credit card.
I can tell you it's always going to evolve your fashion. Like if you talk to my wife, my fashion went from straight up, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, Italian style. I was about to say the G word, but the Italian style. You know what I was going to say, right? I'm not sure if that's going to, it's okay for me to say.
I don't think you'd get canceled.
No, it's okay for me to say because I'm Italian. But anyway, from leather jacket to whatever to, to preppy to whatever to
Sure.
what I wear now. So
Oh, yeah. I mean, at your age, I had a closet full of suits
Yeah.
because that's what you had to wear.
yeah.
And, I had like probably 300 ties and, and shoes.
Yeah.
And now I'm down to one suit.
Dang.
Well, times change. I mean,
Absolutely.
fashion changes, but times change. When I was working fresh out of college,
Mm-hmm.
everyone wore jacket and tie. Sure. Everyone wore a suit. So I had to get suits.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, things got more casual.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't need the tie. And then I didn't need the jacket. And now it's, golf shirts and khakis or, some kind of slacks. And now that I'm in steel, it's jeans.
That's amazing. Sometimes I can't tell if fashion is progressing or digressing.
Yeah.
It's a bit of both, I feel like.
It's both. It
Right?
goes either way.
Yeah.
I see some stuff from the 80s coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we used to wear a lot when we were in high school.
Yeah, 80s, 90s, because Janko jeans are starting to come back.
Oh God, no.
So like,
I see. I'm not familiar with Janko jeans because I'm baby
oh
boy.
yeah, because it ended. Yeah, because you
Probably
were
right when I was born.
yeah,
I'm guessing.
yeah, because it was let's say 95 to 99 to 2000.
Okay, yeah.
And then it's an interesting story. You can go on YouTube about Janko, but
Okay.
then it just kind of fell off. But it's like starting to come back, and like I just recently bought myself 2 pairs of Janko jeans.
Fantastic.
My son's got two or three pairs of Janko jeans, Janko shorts. Like it's interesting the stuff that falls off comes back. But I mean that could also be said for music.
Sure, absolutely. It's I'm getting really into house music, like the electronic side of things.
Okay.
And that ends up being my escape from classical music because I think it's much like how the voice is such a tangible object. Electricity is this tangible object as well through like synthesizers and beat pads and stuff like that. So it ends up being such a freaking fun thing to do.
So what are you listening to now on the electric house side?
Electric house side, there's so many. I love listening to Wookie. Wookie's really cool. He does a lot of house music. I love listening to the older kind of house. I wouldn't even call it house. I think it would be just dance at that point. Justice. That's a classic. That ends up being like the Daft Punk predecessor, I think. It's like not as overly cheesy as some of Daft Punk's music, which I still love. But Justice ends up being like super crafty and has these really cool like breakbeat sounds. Yeah. The Prodigy is super, super cool
Oh
too.
yeah,
I love the Prodigy.
I love the Prodigy, but when they went too mainstream,
Oh no, it was a sad day.
yeah.
Sad
Also, Moby.
Moby, I gotta find that one.
Yeah, you haven't.
He's kind of OG about a lot of the stuff that you hear now. He came out in the early 90s.
Yeah, I believe early '90s.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you right now, based on looking at my phone right now, like what I've been listening to, it's my music library on Apple Music is so freakishly weird. Like
It's eclectic.
very eclectic.
You're
Like,
gonna
But
hear
that's
it.
good.
I've
You're gonna
got like
hear
the
it first.
Hans Zimmer Dune Part 2 soundtrack because I've watched that movie religiously now because the music is so good. Chris Lake is a house musician. The $1 Million Baby song that is being passed around like wildfire is very awesome. Don Diablo. Jacob Collier, though, I think is somebody I'm listening to a lot. But he's not house music. He's like jazz fusion, I'd say. And I think he's probably like 29 now. I started listening to him when I was getting my bachelor's, and it was really cool to listen to him. But when you went to Berkeley, everybody's like, Jacob Collier is Jesus. Like everybody loved him.
Yeah.
It was like this, all of this complex harmony, and his voice is just incredible too. He's this British guy, and so he's got this really soft voice, and then he can also just sing all of these like multi-octave voice parts. And so when you heard him sing, it was like, how is he doing like 38 voice parts? And he's using Logic too, the music software that I love using, because Logic ends up being like the souped up version of a GarageBand. So if you've used GarageBand as a kid, using Logic was no different, because there was a lot of things that were already implemented into GarageBand that stayed in Logic Pro. So I ended up using that software a lot, and I should be using it more too, because then I can just release my stuff more. I'm very hesitant about doing that stuff because I'm still my worst critic, but I need to. Yeah, that's the
You
worst.
always
Yeah.
will be.
Yeah.
Artistic people are always so hard on
Always, yeah.
themselves.
Always.
Yeah,
Even in different environments too, like at the restaurant, I'm like learning things that I never learned before. So when I'm unaware of something, I'm like, oh, damn, like I should have known that. And then Javier, my dad, will be like, dude, you have no idea how to do this. It's okay. It's okay. But like I expect myself to just get it right immediately, and that cannot be farther from the truth. Like,
Yeah,
I think the minute you don't know it is the minute success will kick in a bit more. And give it some studying. Like I'm working on my studying skills, working on reading a bit more. Like it's meditating, just getting all of the things that are good for the mind and soul. Like sobering up. I think that's another really big deal too, because there's a lot of musicians, especially back. It was crazy back in when like classical musicians were starting to become celebrities, like Nikolai Gedda, Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, like all these guys from the 20th century, fantastic musicians, but chain smokers, like, and all of these amazing opera singers that you hear still today, who have now, passed, but you hear all their stories. They used to be on like the covers of cigarette magazines.
Yep.
And they still had these gems of voices, but then you are now learning that all these indulgences are like sins. It's like you can't do any of this, but you can enjoy it still. But you can still prioritize your health before anything else. Then you can reward yourself.
Exactly. Especially when your body is your instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You're a singer.
You got to treat it like a temple. Like it's a place of peace.
So that's your instrument. It's not like a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk to a musician, what do they cherish the most? Their guitar or their drum. They treat it like a baby. So the same thing with your voice. You gotta cherish that, treat that as a baby. You gotta take care of yourself, because that's your instrument.
And it's great that you bring that up too, with treating your voice and your body like properly, because when we went to practice rooms, like I could only be in a practice room for probably 2 hours a day, because if I went above that, I would get tired and my voice would hurt, and if I wasn't using it correctly, because when we went to our lessons, we were in our coachings, we were learning how to use our instrument effectively. It wasn't just there to sing. It was like there are these the mechanics of your voice and your body play an important role into this piece as well. It's not just about singing it full blast and boisterous, like it. Otherwise, you're not going to have a voice. There are people who sustain a lot of vocal injuries because they don't have a concept of how to effectively use their voice. And that's important, especially because we treat when we're breathing, a lot of people like breathe through our chest mostly, and that's like 1/3 of your lung volume. So when we breathe through our diaphragm, which even then only moves like 1/4 of an inch inside your body, it still fills up like 100%. And then you learn, we called it like the people had like cocktail straw methods and regular straw methods. So they would like take a straw in your mouth, and then you'd learn how to like exhale properly, and then you'd take the straw out of your mouth, and then you'd do it like that as well. I never did that. I just learned how to do it just like,
Yeah.
and just maintain that using your core. There's so many mechanics that I can explain, but I think it might melt my brain too.
Well, it's a thing. I mean, I did some singing a long time ago.
Cool.
I did a lot of musicals in my 20s when I was living out in California. I was never trained, except for the musical director giving me tips and tricks. But, there is a type of breathing. There's a way of singing. It's not just, carpool karaoke.
Yeah.
There is, breathing in and breathing out and using your diaphragm. It's not just everything that's right here as a voice. It's almost like your whole body.
Right.
And people don't know that, especially when it comes to when you're saying classical or opera. I do have a friend who sang opera I went to high school with, and she was just an incredible singing voice, especially for opera. I don't know if she's still doing it now, but it's a whole new level.
Sure.
And it's I don't say very difficult. I mean, if you're at that level, it's easy for you to sing.
Sure, but to others, yeah, I still would find it difficult too. Like my job is trying to like find a place in this industry is of course very difficult. Like you have to grind, and that's the thing I'm learning right now. It's like you can have you can be gifted, but you need to still you need to understand that. And this is from like a personal perspective. Like I'm grateful that I have this gift, but I also need to use it and use it effectively. It's not about just being like, I can sing whenever I want. You can't just be a parlor singer. Like if you want to be the best of the best, you need to work and you need to push, and you're going to be told no so many times before you get a yes, especially in the opera industry. And you can't say no to those little roles either. Like you're not like, I'm not expected to get Tamino immediately, the biggest German role in Mozart opera. Like you cannot just expect that. You need to realize that, hey, you're probably going to get a cover role. You're probably going to start with that. You're going to be the understudy to the dude that is better than you. And I think the minute you know that is when you start developing that humble aspect to opera, because you need to learn from people who are better than you. Well, that's the best thing.
Yeah, that's exactly in any
career.
Right.
Any career. I mean, when I started out, I was a staff accountant.
Mm-hmm.
You learn from the people above you. You learn from the controller you're working for. You learn from the CFO. And you take those things and take it to the next level. So you get to the point where you're the person now kind of guiding the people below you and saying, because you've learned some things along the way that you've discovered yourself or someone else has taught you. Same thing in the music industry.
Yeah.
I have family in the music industry. I know Chen doesn't like me talking about it, but she's a writer, and she's written a screenplay, and it's like you say that you're your own worst critic, and you can kind of put yourself in a little bit of an editing cycle where you're just rehashing the same thing over and over again. It's good.
Yes.
Stop. Leave it alone.
Don't touch it. Like if you keep editing it, it's just going to get more difficult.
It's like cooking. At some point, you got to put it in the oven.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you got to take it out of the oven, and then you got to let it rest.
And then you have to serve it.
And people are going to like it, or they're not going to like it.
And if they don't like it, start from scratch. Or adjust.
Yeah. Same thing. In opera, because that's what you're going into, or that's what you're in now. Where do you find the work for that? Because you don't see it that often unless you're in some of the major cities.
Yeah. So currently right now, it's mainly working for churches. So it's just because I know for a fact that the career does not lie in Brunswick, but the maintenance of my voice still can exist here. So it's being a section leader for a church where my voice will still stay warm. It's my current teacher right now. I don't know if you guys know Jim Broussard. He is a music director over at Christ Church in Frederica, and he's a fantastic guy. He's very, very talented, and he knows, and he's been in this career for decades as well. And he used to be I forget what he did at the Met. I believe he was like librarian, or he could have been the ticket guy if I remember correctly too. But either way, like those little things add up in Brunswick for sure. And then it got to the point where he and I are actually going to be doing a concert, March's Edge, I think it's called. It's for like a little private event, and it's good pay. That's an important thing. Like, there's a point where you ask yourself, would you do it for free? Absolutely, sure. But if you're trying to get a business out of it, you gotta get paid.
Right.
Yes.
So, because you can be as humble as you are. It's like, oh no, your money's no good here, and I'm like, thank you, I will take, because I got bills to pay, and this if I'm gonna use this gift to effectively start my career. A career requires some form of income, and if you can use your talent for income, that's the coolest thing on the planet. Like, that's amazing. And my goal, by the time I'm 30, is to make money from nothing but music. Like, I feel like that's a good goal to have, for sure, because then I can just keep doing that for the rest of my life, and then I can travel, and then I can keep doing operas in Hamburg or Berlin or Italy, and just keep doing the things I love while maintaining contact with my family. That's the main reason I moved back too.
Yeah.
I was away from home for 5.5 years, and I missed everybody. And then next thing you know, Brunswick kind of becomes your family. Like, when I came back from graduation, everybody was like, "Whoa, he's back!" And it was really cool to see that. So it's really it's a beautiful place, Brunswick is.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's very intoxicating.
It is. And that's kind of the reason why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
To connect everybody with everybody in the Golden Isles.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I feel like when I come into the restaurants, into the market, like,
Sure.
I feel like family.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's amazing.
It's cool, and we want to make you feel like that because you're good people. So that's important.
Wow, that's what my witness protection officer keeps on telling me.
Oh,
But no.
gotcha.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. I won't say anything.
No. Shh. Don't say anything.
So one of the questions I used to get fresh out of college is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. Oh, 5 years, hopefully out of Brunswick. But yeah, I hope to see myself. My main goal is financial stability right now, just to get everything taken care of personally, and then still be doing music, obviously. But I see myself doing a lot of competitions and a lot of shows, and I hope to see myself traveling everywhere, and having Brunswick be that hub, because it's actually kind of awesome to have Brunswick as your hub, because you have that airport that goes straight to Atlanta, and then Atlanta's the biggest freaking airport in the world, so you can
Go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope to have that perk of just being able to hop back and forth between the states and the countries like that. It's not hard to do. It's getting everything sorted out first, I think. Or, and I think of this too, like, maybe you don't need everything sorted out. Maybe you take that risk and just go. And I've been given that advice too, to just get out and flourish. And I see myself possibly doing that as well.
Yeah. You definitely, I mean, that would be my advice. I mean, at your age, that's what I did.
Yeah.
I actually, at 24, I quit my job, packed everything up, and I drove cross country by myself for 2 months.
Wow.
And just get out. Just did it. I ended up in San Francisco.
That's amazing.
And then living out in California for a while before moving back to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
But you're at a stage. You've got an incredible gift.
Thank you.
Great skill. But you don't have to go experience.
Yeah.
People say, live your life. Live your life. No, experience your life.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things. And push your boundaries. Like, I never thought I'd be doing a podcast.
Sure.
You know, or you know, I did theater a long time ago. I never thought I'd be doing it again at this age.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be living in Georgia at all.
Sure.
Because I'm from Boston.
Right.
I'm a northerner, so I never thought I'd be living down here. I've been down here for almost 20 years.
Wow.
So never say never is
Yeah.
one thing, but just experience it and travel and do what you do because you're going to, just bring those people around, and you're going to find it. And the only way to kind of make your way and have your, and I say this a lot to my wife, is there's a large level of luck involved.
Absolutely.
You have to be at the right place at the right time with the right people.
Yep.
But you have to be ready and prepared for that.
Yeah, like you have to be ready to pack up and go.
Yeah.
If that moment of opportunity arises, just
you have to be ready for it. You have to be prepared for it, and just from when that person says you're the person, that you can just do it.
Yep.
And not be like, hem and haw at it.
Yeah.
Like when we went out to that film festival,
Yep.
I made sure that we had links and copies to her short, even though we weren't in it. We were going to be talking to a bunch of screenwriters and producers and filmmakers. And lo and behold, we had a number of people that we talked to wanted to see her short. She wasn't part of it, but we were prepared. We had it on a flash drive, so if someone had something, we could plug it in. We had the link on our phone, so we could just send right over.
Yeah.
It's like you got to be that kind of prepared.
Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, if you've got some stuff that you can always kind of keep in your pocket and say, hey, I want to listen to what you can do. I'm like, oh, here you go.
Yeah.
Plug that into
pull it out of your phone too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's amazing how you can use your phone without using
technology.
TikTok. Yeah, like just having that kind of stuff ready.
Is be ready to go. When you listen to some of these successful artists, whether they're musicians or actors or filmmakers, it's because they were at the right place at the right time, and the right person saw what they were doing, but they were prepared for it.
Yeah.
So, kind of like the Boy Scouts, be prepared.
It's true though, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why Boy Scouts end up being pretty dope people too.
So, so now, as you progress with your career in music, do you need to find yourself an agent?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that it's a thing I've been trying to do recently. I have a guy, colleague of mine, and I would say friend. He's a fantastic teacher at McGill University. His name is Brett Poligato, and he is one of those teachers that is constantly traveling as well, performing mainly in like Ireland and Vienna and those areas. It's amazing. So he's a guy who's been like my number one of my big supporters. A lot of the teachers at Schulich School of Music were very disappointed to see me graduate early, but at the same time they were like, okay, this guy maybe needs a little break. And then in hindsight, I'm like, maybe I should have stayed a tiny bit extra. But Brett Poligato, I had a conversation with him after I had my recital back in December, and we sat down, and basically he's one of my guys, like basically one of my hype men. He's like, I'm going to send your stuff out to agents and we'll see what happens. And maybe it's one of those things where I don't exactly know how to present myself to agents. Maybe I'm not doing the proper research. It's always like an overthinking thing with me of just send your stuff out. It's okay. Like have, but you need to have, what I'm learning is you can't just be like, hey, I'm interested in being part of your agency. Like, no, that's like, okay, whoop-de-doo. Like have fun. Like you need to be like, you need to research. You need to be like, hey, I noticed you have A, B, and C on your agency roster. I would love to talk with them about being a classical musician or being a recitalist. Like being a recitalist too ends up being very lucrative too. So there are a lot of people who end up not being part of the opera industry. They end up going into recitals instead, and that ends up paying really well too, because those are very fantastic concerts. They end up, instead of doing just arias and opera pieces from opera, you end up doing a lot of art songs with composers by like Schubert, Schumann, Strauss, etc. It's all those smaller stories, and it ends up feeling like an anthology rather than a full story. So it's really cool to do that kind of stuff. But going back, yes, you definitely need to find some kind of agent. There are some people who, again, luck is another very big thing, right place, right time. But I think if you're trying to be a professional musician, connections are going to be your best friend.
Yep.
Of just finding the right people and people who really want to see you succeed, and making those connections and talking with them, and not talking about yourself too much, like keeping your undivided attention about what they want out of what they're paying you for, right? They're like, you can't just go to an agent and they're like, I need you to, I want you to put me in this, this, and this. Like, no, the agent's going to find something for you that'll suit your needs and his, because
Right.
he needs to get paid too, right? So there has to be a good exchange.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to do a opera in a Marvel movie, please.
Yes, can I please sing Iron Man opera edition, please?
Yes.
I heard Tony Stark was a tenor this year, so
Yeah. If you ever do Thor the musical,
I'd like to see that actually.
that would actually be.
Thanos would definitely be a bass.
Yeah.
He'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
I hope they remember you.
I am inevitable.
And I am Iron Man. Snap.
You should have went for the head.
Oh man.
Oh my god.
I think we're making lemonade here. I think we need to try to make something happen here now.
You're right. I know. Like, hopefully somebody will listen to this and be like,
That's a really good idea.
Thor the musical. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
Either that or it's a terrible speech impediment and it's actually Soar the musical.
It's a off Broadway
It's
comedy.
D tier theater right there.
Yeah,
it's actually New Jersey.
It's Lakewood.
You know, it's Broadway. It's a Broadway Atlantic City musical.
Oh my god.
Oh.
That's incredible. Oh my god.
But how was McGill? The whole program itself.
Oh man, it was incredible. It was my first time, not my first time out of the country, because it's in Canada, so it's not far.
It doesn't count, right?
But Quebec is really cool though, because it's one of those, it almost seems like sanctioned off from the rest of Canada, because Quebec is practically a very European part of Canada.
Yeah.
So it's like Toronto it's been compared to like a lot of the metropolitan European cities, and then Toronto is like the New York of Canada.
Yeah.
And so, but Montreal in particular is this really cool cultural melting pot.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of halal restaurants. There's a lot of French restaurants. There's a lot of Italian places. Like there are people who go to succeed there, and almost like I was able to find my career pretty much instantly there, as just part of the choir programs there. So I started at Church of St. Andrew in St. Paul, and I started as a sub. So like in most places, you start from the bottom and then you work your way up to the top. And so I ended up getting on the professional roster over there, and that professional roster actually gave me connections to multiple different locations in Quebec. So I was able to go to Laval and Gatineau and Longueuil. Like it was really cool choir programs that I was able to just be hired for, and then you get paid right after the show's over. And then I also worked at synagogue, conservative Judaism synagogue, which was really cool, because you learn about how to blend in with different cultures, and it was always really fun to go to those just services. And like I worked at a Presbyterian church, an Eastern Orthodox church. I worked for this guy named Philippe, who was also getting Philippe Bourque. He was getting his doctorate at McGill in choir studies at the time, but he was also a husband and a father to 2 kids as well. So I had the pleasure of working with him in a concert. Not remembering what it was, but he had a very excellent music selection that he had for this very spacious church. That's one of my favorite things to do, just singing at churches, because my favorite sensation is like the reverb in a church.
Right.
It's super cool. So being in the experience at McGill opened up a lot of doors for just being outside of McGill's, because it encouraged you to not get a normal job. Like if you wanted to be a musician, you should go get like a church gig. That was a norm for all of the vocalists. They're always having a normal church gig and then maybe finding a little thing on the side. And then my teachers there were, oh my God, they were so supportive. Like some of the nicest people I ever met at McGill. And my teacher in particular, his name is John McMaster. And funny enough, before he got into opera, he was a Christian like hard rock singer. Yeah, it was insane. Like it's amazing where opera singers come from, where it's not just classical music. They start in churches. They start with their own little bands. They start as like jazz singers, and then they work their way in. So John, he just has this like the soul of just he's a saint basically. And whenever you went into a lesson with him, he was always like, he wasn't there to correct you. He was there to like adjust a couple of things and then ask like during your warm up is like, does that feel comfortable to you? Mm-hmm. Like, does that suit you? Not does that suit him? Because he's of course he's getting paid to teach you how to use your instrument effectively.
Right.
Which is what the voice teacher was about. And then the vocal coach, which was my teacher, Michael McMahon. And he's like the guru at McGill. He's been there since like 1985. And I think he's like, I think he told me he was like 76, if I remember correctly. But he's been all over the world. He lived in Austria for like 20 plus years. He's a Renaissance man at the highest level. And vocal coaching was always about interpretation and story. So when you brought a piece over to him, he would tell you that he would teach you about the diction of it, and he'd tell you a little bit about the story. And he was always teaching me how to not be so tense when I'm singing, because like I'm big barrel chested. I try not to hunker down when I'm singing these very high notes, because when people meet me, they think I'm like a bass or, and then they hear me talk and they're like, "Oh, he's a tenor." I'm like, yes, that is me. So the main reason you go for your master's degree, it's not just for the location. You end up going because of your teachers. So I found the original person I had met when I was in Boston, and we were still online at the time. So I did a Zoom lesson with the interim chair at the time. Her name is Dominique Lebel, and she was so sweet. She was such a sweet lady to talk to, and I saw her at my graduation recently, and she was like she's so bubbly, super bubbly. But she was a soprano, and I think she had a discomfort in teaching tenors, because she was like, I'm very good at teaching sopranos. And this was the best part, so because I wanted to meet her because she was the chair, and that gave me an opportunity to meet the head of somebody who is as reputable as Schulich School of Music. Especially McGill is like the Harvard of Canada, so
yeah,
I'm trying to meet all of the best. And so she pointed me towards John McMaster, who I had met and the main reason I also went to McGill was that was the only conservatory at the time that offered live auditions, because it was still COVID. So there were two places I went to. I went to Jacob School of Music in Bloomington, Indiana, and then McGill in Canada. So it was my first time going to Canada as an adult. I went there when I was like 3 years old, long time ago. But everything was still shut down. Everything was like, it was a ghost town in such a big city. And so I had met John for a trial lesson right after I had finished my audition. And immediately he was like, we didn't really have any complaints. You're pretty much in. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I was, yeah. It was an amazing experience, and somebody is I like saying the word jolly, because he is a jolly fellow, and he always was super supportive, even right from the get go. Even people he just never met or didn't see that often, like he could just always start a conversation with that person, and everybody always enjoyed his presence. Like I hate to say Santa Claus, because that's. But yeah, he was like happy Santa Claus, but also he was hard when he needed to be. Like if I didn't know something about a piece, he's like, you should probably get that studied, Mr. Schroeder. I'm like, you're probably right. And then all of my colleagues there too, students too, I just learned a lot from them too, because as somebody who has performed and studied opera, I still know very little about it, because it's not one of those things I listen to in my downtime. I'm listening to jazz. I'm listening to 90s hip hop. Like I love listening to Tribe Called Quest. I love listening to Grand Poobah. Like it's all of all of these 90s hip hop guys that I just grew into. But of course, like during study time or when I'm reading, like there's always some kind of art song or opera going. But whenever I was assigned something or committed to my senior recital, my project, I was listening to those on the daily, just making sure that I was saying all the diction correctly. And you had to listen to multiple singers too. You couldn't just listen to one guy like Jonas Kaufmann, who's a very, very well-known German tenor. And you had to go through all of these different styles of how they were singing it. And of course, not replicating it, but more or less trying to find your sound through their sound.
Right.
Which is really, really neat. So research was cool.
Who's your favorite opera singer then?
Ooh, what a good question. So, my favorite guy I've been listening to, there's two, because it's a very close tie. My first guy would be this guy named Werner Guda. He is German tenor, and he specializes mostly in Schubert music, so a lot of German lieder, not necessarily opera, but he does sings the crap out of opera too. Like, he's incredible. But I was learning this piece called Schwanengesang, which translates to swan song. It's a beautiful song cycle. It's about, if I remember correctly, it's like 20 pieces long. Could be wrong. Somebody's going to fact check me after this podcast. But it was the first time I was singing the song cycle too. I'd done one of the pieces way back in high school, and I completely butchered it because I did not learn all. I was too lazy to learn all of the stanzas correctly. So I was like, we're just going to sing through two of them. And it was a terrible idea because I forgot. I didn't know what I was singing. I was like, oh, crap. I was like, this is bad. But I stood a chance as a master's student because then I felt like my studious mindset was ready to get all this stuff learned because you dived right into the poetry at first. Like, that's always my advice if you're a classical musician, is always start with the poetry, because that was the thing we learned at Franz Schubert Institute in Austria. Like, you always start with the text because there's more significance in that text than there is in the music.
Right.
That music in there is merely just a sprinkle. Like, hearing and learning how to speak the poetry. We learned how to do like poetry coachings too with this girl named Gabi Jacobi, and she's like this very her mom used to be like one of the greatest actors in all of Austria. So having her in the presence was pretty nerve-wracking at first because I didn't know if I was going to get like a ruler slap on the hand and I screwed up. I was like, I'm just kidding. But whenever I messed up, she'd be like, 9 again. I was like, okay, keep it going. And I think the best part about it though was my pianist that I was working with, my best friend too. His name is Tony Stoffer. He's from Bayonne, France. So very thick French accent. Imagine that trying to recite German poetry. Oh my God, it's so funny. Because he would end up walking out of the coachings afterwards like, that was very difficult. I was like, yeah, tell me about it. And it was like listening to it was very like, there were days where I was like, I could do this for you, Tony, if you want to. But we as musicians were both expected to learn how to speak the poetry. So we'd be sitting on benches trying to teach him the poetry and like trying to get him how to do all these specific inflections in the German language. And it was a lot of fun, and it still is. And I hope to see him again and work with him in the future. Yeah, because he's amazing.
Well, that's the thing about with the opera is a lot of people they enjoy the opera. They don't really understand the words that are being sung, but it's the emotion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that comes from the poetry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's for me. I mean,
No, yeah.
It's been a while since I've been to an opera, but it's the emotion that kind of is exuded out with it, which makes it so compelling.
Right.
That really tells the story.
And then from our perspective, that comes from us understanding the language so that the audience can at least understand the emotion. Like if there's no super title of the translation, you can at least feel it, right? And that's back to Werner Guda, why he didn't really have a lot of live recordings, but he did have a lot of just stuff, like a lot of discography, a lot from like I said, Schwanengesang. So when I was hearing him sing, it was like, I would cry in the car because I would understand what he was saying because I had studied the poetry, and he was able to really convey to, even through a freaking car speaker, like, wow, how is he able to do something like that? And the fact that I'm able to do something like that is it's a blessing.
It's amazing. Really cool. It's amazing.
Super cool.
And I've heard you sing. So
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm literally taken to another place when I've heard you sing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
So, and I'm hoping to see your name somewhere.
Oh man, I strive for that. Absolutely.
I mean, I can't stress this enough, and everyone will eventually hear you sing because you're going to get there. I know it. I have that feeling. You're going to be on that main stage. But you are amazing. So it does, your voice, your singing does take you, or took me, to another place.
Well,
so
that means a lot. Thank you so much.
yeah.
For the people listening, where can we hear you sing right now, if any?
Yeah, I mean, if this microphone doesn't sound horrible, I think I can make it work. There's a piece I'm learning for this competition called the Gerda Lisner Foundation. So hopefully I get in and we can get a good grand prize out of that and make it work. So there's a song called In der Ferne, and I can do like the first part of it. So if I can, I'm trying to make sure I don't blast out this microphone.
You can stand up if you need to,
Just
or
get a little,
whatever,
oh,
whatever's comfortable
little
for
stretch
you.
out.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Here we go. So, and I got a perfect little extended thing.
Yeah.
Wehe dem fliehenden Welt hinausziehenden, fremde durchmessenden, Heimat vergessenden, Mutterhaus hassenden, Freunde verlassenden, folget kein Segen, ach, auf ihren Wegen nach, auf ihren Wegen nach. That's just the first line.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
That is
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
That is,
That is a joy. That's a fun song,
That
even
is
if it's about eternal suffering. But that's a little taste of it.
I mean, if that's the way eternal suffering is going to be, I'll take it.
I'll take it any day. My goodness.
Amazing.
That is amazing.
Thank you so much.
That is amazing.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Man, I am so happy that we were able to have you on this podcast.
It was an honor to be on the podcast.
Do you do this on open mic night?
I should. I've been asked to do it a lot. I think just what ends up happening is I still have like this weird shyness thing where I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing this on open mic night. Like, I don't know if people should be here. Like, I don't know if people want to hear mainstream music or not on an open mic night. I've done it before. Like, I did Nessun Dorma, like the big boy one. It's like Vina Chad, that one. And I did that for our first open mic night, and people went ballistic.
I was there.
Yeah, I remember, and that people were just
yeah.
like, the mayor was there too, and Cosby, and he was, gobsmacked. He was like,
Yeah.
how did you do that? Like,
Yeah. I was
I
like,
don't know.
I just do it, man. That's
I just learn things and am enjoying it. Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Yeah. Well,
Well, I mean, thank you so much for being on here.
It was a
I
pleasure.
Mean, we really appreciate it.
Yeah. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
if there's
thank you.
ever a part 2, let me know.
Yeah, and we
Happy to
could
hop
always
back
do a
on.
part 2. We try to keep like everything about an hour. 'Cause that
Amazing.
seems to be everyone's attention span.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Yeah, that's nice.
I guess my one last question before we kind of wrap this up is, have you ever thought about like just putting this stuff like on your stuff on Spotify or social media just to get it out there?
Yeah, and you know what? And I think I can use the algorithm of social media a bit more effectively to that extent. I think if I, keep recording, because I had posted a video yesterday of me just practicing a piece, and well received, yeah. And I think it's just a matter of having my profile represent who I am as an artist, not just as a human, because I think that ends up being the problem. I think the algorithm wants consistency. So it's like, you can't be like, Happy Father's Day, Dad. And then the next one is like, here's an aria of me singing.
Right, yeah.
You gotta have consistency.
I hear you.
But for Spotify, yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a matter of finding a pianist and a good AV team that'll just record it, and then me putting it out on DistroKid and then putting it on Spotify, and then making an artist Spotify account. So I think that think that needs to begin like yesterday.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Good idea, Mike.
I try.
Yeah, nailed it.
Well, once again, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yes,
It was a
thank you.
pleasure. Thank you guys so
Yeah.
much.
So this is the Beard signing off.
This is Buddha.
Jackson Emmett Schroeder. Thank you guys for having me on here.
Thank you.